Welcome back. We are following developments in redistricting efforts in several states today, resulting from last month's Supreme Court decision limiting the Voting Rights Act. South Carolina lawmakers are considering a proposal to change the Palmetto State's congressional map less than a month before its scheduled primaries. It comes as Alabama Governor Kay Ivey calls for a special primary election in August after the Supreme Court late yesterday allowed the state to use a congressional map that was redrawn in 2023 that includes just one district with an African-American majority. Virginia Democrats, meanwhile, are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to restore the state's recently redrawn map. Virginia voters approved that map, which could net Democrats as many as 4 congressional seats. But last month, the state's Supreme Court struck it down, saying that the ruling, that it violated the state's constitution. Joining me now is Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, a Democrat from Virginia and a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. So, Congresswoman, thank you for being here. Let's first talk about the situation in Virginia. Do you think it is realistic for the Supreme Court to overrule the ruling of the state-level Supreme Court that these maps were invalid and violated the Virginia Constitution?
Well, I don't trust the Roberts Court to do the right thing on anything having to do with redistricting after they gutted what's left of the Voting Rights Act. So I'm not holding out hope that they'll be the cavalry coming in to save the day.
Let's talk about the decision that Democrats made to move forward with this map. Looking back on it, do you wish that the process had gone differently? I mean, one of the things that the state Supreme Court quibbled with was the timing of the election, when the election opened versus election day. Do you think that you had dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's to make sure that you were in line with the Constitution to make sure that this passed if the voters approved it?
You know, hindsight is 20/20, and I can't control the past. All I can control is the future, and I think we need to move forward and organize and mobilize. We can still win at least 2, if not 3, in this climate, maybe even 4 of those seats under the current maps, and that's where we need to put our energy rather than second-guessing the past, which we can't change.
So what I'm hearing you say then is that you're more interested in fighting this battle at the ballot box than necessarily at the courtroom. Have you kind of given up on the idea that these maps are going to change, that you're going to have to work off the maps that were there before the referendum?
You know, I wouldn't say I've given up, but I would say that I am a political actor. I am focused on the election as a practical matter. If we're going to change maps in time for the upcoming election, it would have to happen this week. And I can't wait for that. I've got to mobilize not only to win my district, but to make sure that we can win as many seats, regardless of what the map looks like. And more importantly, we need to mobilize to counter what the Deep South is doing now that the Voting Rights Act has been gutted.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. You're a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. There's a possibility that as many as a third of the CBC members are in jeopardy of losing their seats as a result of these nationwide redistricting efforts. What is the CBC going to do to try and protect its members? And how concerned are you about this Supreme Court decision and how it could impact minority voters?
Yeah, I'm very concerned because the Supreme Court has ignored over 100 years of history. The Voting Rights Act was put in place because the former Confederate states used tactics, including redistricting, including poll taxes and literacy tests, that on their face were race neutral, but implemented in a discriminatory way. And now the Supreme Court has given those same states carte blanche to do that, and they are doing so with deliberate speed. So the Congressional Black Caucus, we knew this was a possibility. It is a full court press. We are working with civil rights organizations to fight this through the courts. We are working on the ground to mobilize and organize and fight this at the ballot box. People are livid. We have not seen this level of attack on Black voting strength since the backlash to Reconstruction, which saw, we went from 20-some members of Congress being Black men to 0 for nearly 100 years. We are not going back to those days. We are going to fight this tooth and nail everywhere we can.
I've been covering redistricting for a long time. I've never seen an era like this that we've seen over the past year with so many states changing their maps in the midst of a decade. Usually this happens after a census. But there could be more now. Do you support Democrats' efforts to look into states like New York, Illinois, and Maryland to perhaps change their maps again after everything that's already happened?
I don't think we have a choice. Look, Republicans know they cannot win at the ballot box based on the merits of their ideas or the actions they've taken since being in control. They know they were going to lose the midterms. That's why the president ordered these states to go down this path. And you cannot fight with one hand tied behind your back while your opponent is fighting with two fists and brass knuckles on each hand. We have got to do everything we can to level the playing field. None of us want to be here, but this is the battleground that Donald Trump laid before us, and we had the opportunity to eliminate partisan gerrymandering. Republicans didn't want to do it because they knew, I think they knew the Supreme Court was going to do what it did, and they're taking advantage of it.
So you say you're willing to do anything, to put everything on the table. The minority leader has vowed maximum warfare. One of the ideas, there's reporting out there being floated in Virginia, is perhaps lowering the age of the state Supreme Court justices to try and push most of them out so that you could reconsider this case. Is that something that you support? Do you think that would be appropriate given what's happened?
I don't think we need to. I think we can let the process work. At least one of them is up for reappointment next year. And even if you completely change the Supreme Court, they're not going to revisit this case. But I can't control that. I can control organizing and mobilizing people to come out and vote this November, because they need to vote like their lives depend on it, because in a lot of ways they do. When we see the cuts to health care, when we see this cost of living crisis that Republicans and the Trump administration are doing nothing to address, there's too much at stake for us to just sit back and throw up our hands.
Okay, I want to play now for you an exchange between a Republican colleague of yours, the Virginia Congresswoman Jen Kiggans, and a radio host out of Richmond yesterday. Take a listen.
If Hakeem Jeffries wants to be involved in Virginia politics, then I suggest he does what a bunch of New Yorkers are doing. Leave New York, move down here to Virginia, run for office down here. You can represent us. If not, get your cotton-picking hands off of Virginia.
That's right. Ditto. Yes to that.
Now, Congresswoman Kiggans responded to that. She responded to some of the reaction that people have had. She said, this is precisely what's wrong with Democrats. Every lie and distortion is intended to distract from getting their hats handed to them. And the Virginia Supreme Court's clear message, stop trying to rig our elections. This is the important part. She said the radio host should not have used that language. I do not and did not condone it. It was obvious to anyone listening that I was agreeing that Hakeem Jeffries should stay out of Virginia politics. Is that how you interpreted that when you heard it? Do you think that she went out of her way not to condone the language used by the radio host?
She giggled and said ditto. That means she agreed with everything that he said. And those words, cotton-picking hands, evoke a dark time in Virginia history and in American history where Black people were treated as property and forced to pick cotton, and they weren't even considered a full person. They were considered 3/5 of a person for the purposes of seeing who is going to serve in Congress. Jen Kiggans represents a significant Black population. She owes them an apology. She owes Hakeem Jeffries an apology. And I think she needs to understand, representing the Commonwealth of Virginia, the birthplace of American democracy, the birthplace of American slavery, that has been trying to reconcile that dichotomy for now over 400 years. She knows better. She knows better, and she should apologize.
Should she resign?
Look, she's not going to. Whether she should or not, she won't. And so we just need to defend her. We need to defeat her at the ballot box this November.
Okay. Congresswoman McClellan, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.